Thanks for coming, Paul.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
You're part of a whole new trajectory for the show.
Okay.
First ever in-person podcast. So
Well,
thanks for being part of the journey.
well, thanks for having me, and I feel very honoured to be the first guest to do it in person. So thank you.
Not take you long to get here.
No, it's about an hour's drive from where I am in Newark. We're just outside Leicester, so it's a relatively easy drive.
We had the conversation. What was it? A month ago now,
About that.
virtually, just to get to know each other a little bit. And we had quite an interesting chat there that I sort of cut short purposefully to save some of that, obviously, for today.
Okay.
'Cause I think trying to recreate a conversation is pretty obvious. You can hear it in the tonality. You're trying to answer questions in a way that doesn't really, answer questions in a way that's not really answering what's been asked, essentially. So I think it'd be quite good to actually get your thoughts on a lot of things.
Okay.
Because you work as a management consultant, is that right?
So I run a company called the Elevate Partnership, and I do two things really. I develop leaders and I develop teams in a corporate environment.
So is there a difference between a leader and a team, for example?
Yeah, well, teams are a group of people that depend on each other to complete a task, to achieve an outcome. A leader is someone that, depending on your view of the definition, for me, a leader is someone that develops other leaders and helps them perform and become the best version of themselves. So yeah, they are slightly different things. A leader has to learn to become themselves and be comfortable with themselves and understand how they behave, so that they can play nice when they meet other people and they start to work with other people. Because a lot of workplace difficulties and people working together is because people don't know how to work with each other, because really they're not taught. It's kind of funny. You remember the days of when we were in the playground, and it's kind of like you go into a work environment, and some work environments you think, we're still in the playground. How does that happen? So, yeah.
Literally, the game is the same. As you said, hierarchies or being in charge if you're the leader or you're someone who has to be part of a team, whether it's football, whether it's in a corporate environment. Some of the rules are slightly different, but the fundamental rules of the game are the same. And I think that's really interesting to try and understand.
I think the rules of the game aren't what we think they are. I think that's part of the problem. We assume leader is, you become part of a hierarchy, and in a lot of organizations you will. But I think leader's not a title or a position in a hierarchy. Leader's a way of being, in that it's a person who, first of all, takes care of themselves and creates an environment for people to be successful and to work together. I think that's the primary thing, and helps people shine their light into the world, is the way I would express it, to say, what is it you're good at? What is it you want to do? Do we have a need for that? Great, we do. Right, let's help you do work that you love to do and help you do it to the best of your ability, so that you walk away at the end of each day feeling, yeah, that was worth swapping a day of my life for, to do what I did in that day.
Yeah, 100%. And for me, there's a difference between a leader and a manager. A leader is someone who sets a standard. It's do as I do. And as you said, they take care of themselves. They high performance individuals. Whereas a manager, for me, is someone who says, do as I say, not as I do, kind of thing. It's micromanaging. So I sort of put a discrepancy or difference between them. I don't know what you think.
I think everyone leads and everyone follows, whether you're a manager or whether you're someone who reports to someone in a hierarchy. I think, if you're a parent, you lead. If you're a school teacher, you lead. If you're a student, you lead. We always take turns. So I think we've got it slightly twisted, and that's what I'm trying to undo. At least in a small way, make a contribution, because globally we spend $65 billion on developing leaders, and you look around and you say, the world's a bit of a mess in a lot of places. You look in a lot of corners, and you say, well, how does that happen? It can't be right that we're spending all that money and we seem to be having immense problems. That human beings are amazing, and when they choose to work together, they do amazing things. So how is it that we can't do that in the workplace. And it's because we don't necessarily teach people, and we reinforce old models and old ways of being that I'd suggest aren't necessarily wholly applicable today.
I think it's important that, for me, the leader or the person that's top of the hierarchy, I know you said it's not necessarily like that, but just for argument's sake,
Mhm.
is the people below them, so the team or the structure or the organisation is only as good as the person at the top. If you take Leicester City, for example, Vishai, after he died, Leicester have gone downhill. Man United, obviously another one. Alex Ferguson, as soon as he left, the whole thing sort of fell apart because that person is projecting themselves out to everyone else. And I think that's obviously something that you probably look at dealing with leaders and teams. So how do you go about improving a leader from someone who's maybe 2 out of 10 to get them to a 9, 10 out of 10? Is there certain things that you look for? Is it very bespoke? Is it looking at them in relation to their role or organization, or is it always about them as an individual?
No, it's complex because you're working with the individual and the context they work in. And I always use the analogy of a farmer and a crop. So if you want to grow a crop, um, you need to make sure the soil is of good quality. Because if the crop doesn't grow because the soil's poor quality, there's no point in shouting at the crop going, grow. Why aren't you growing? So one of the leader's responsibilities is to create the environment where people can grow. The second thing then is to really make people aware of, and it's not really good or bad. It's how do you think is the start point. So we have technical skills. I can screw screws into things, or I can hammer nails, or I can program a computer, or I can take photographs, or I can record sound, and I can edit it. Those are technical skills. But there's ways of thinking. And a good test is, can you take an idea in one and hold it in one hand and then think completely the opposite idea without judging it and say, well, I don't agree with this idea, but I'm willing to entertain it. Whereas some people are just naturally closed off. And often it's to do with their identity, is how they see themselves in a particular context. And that tends to be a product of their conditioning, their education, how they've been brought up by their carers or their family, that leads us to be a certain way in the world and to see it. And what we do with leadership, the leadership development I do what's called vertical development, which is encouraging people to think in different ways, to become more self-aware of how they're thinking. A good way to think about it is, imagine you're dancing on a dance floor. What I encourage people to do is to go up to the balcony above the dance floor and then look down at themselves dancing and say, what do you see? What's this person doing? What are they thinking? What are they feeling? What's causing them to be this way? Once we start asking those questions, we start to get some really interesting answers. Things have happened in the past. I've learned something because of a certain event. And what we try to do is to say, so if you've learned that and that's how you're behaving, how's that working for you? And sometimes people will say, well, it's not working really well. And you say, so would you like to change that? And some of them will say yes. And you kind of go, great, okay, let's do some practice experiments. Let's do little experiments to do certain things differently. So it might be something as simple as, why don't you praise someone genuinely in the moment, but give them a compliment for doing something well, because you're known for not doing that. And when we compliment people genuinely, then that encourages people to give more of themselves, more effort. So it's a series of experiments, because we want to tell stories of when it worked well. So we might try something, and you might try something and say, I want you to listen to someone, and I want you to practice these specific skills. So when you listen, I want you to maintain eye contact. I want you to nod. I want you to summarize what people are saying. So what I think I heard you say is this. And that's all part of active listening. And if you're not a natural listener, then those are things to explore. And then I work with them and I say, so how did that go? What was easy? And people say, oh, this was easy and that was easy. You know, the eye contact thing, that was really easy. You go, okay, so what was difficult? What was tricky? And they might say something like, well, trying to remember everything they said and playing it back to them, I found that difficult. And you go, okay, well, it's just like riding a bike. Remember the first time you tried to ride a bike, it was all a bit awkward and you probably fell off. That's okay. That's all part of the learning. When you do something for the first time, you're going to be like a child trying to ride a bike. It's not going to go well necessarily. You might be lucky and it goes well. That's all right. The thing is to keep going and keep practicing. So we'll practice that for a period of time, and then we'll start to measure, what the improvement is. And then we'll ask other people. We'll say, Molly's learning about how to listen to people. How's she doing? What advice would you have for her? And they'll say, she's doing great. What I love her to do is, and then whatever it is, and then you feed that back in a coaching session. You go, so I've had some feedback. Are you open to some feedback? And either they are or they aren't. And then you say, so how about this as a suggestion? And they'll either go, yeah, I like that. I'll try that. Or they go, nah, that's not really for me. And that's kind of how it works. And there are so many micro skills in learning to become yourself, really, to become more of yourself and to figure out how to engage and play with other people so that you work together really well. That can be quite a journey to learn.
I love what you said there. There's so much to unpick. Whether it's instead of telling someone, you show them from the balcony. I think that's really important. Instead of telling someone you must go and live in Australia, get this qualification, then move to London and do this, you show someone something. The other thing that you've done is asking questions, which I think is massive because people tend to know the answers. You have to draw it out of them. They have to say it themselves instead of saying, well, you're fat, go and lose some weight. You say things like, do you think that your body shape is acceptable? If you saw someone else like that, how would you judge them? I'd say they was fat, etc. And it helps to really draw, and they understand that. The other thing that you said I think is really important is if you praise people, they become more like that. It's the whole Gollum versus Pygmalion effect.
That's right.
The Gollum effect is, for those who don't know, if you say to someone they're messy or they are untidy or they're very bad at time management, they actually become more like that. Whereas if you say, thanks for being so tidy today, thanks for being on time, thanks for giving such a great presentation, thanks for being a great guest on the podcast or whatever, they tend to become more like that. And the same goes for yourself. If you have a negative self-belief, as you said, or I don't like doing this, I'm not very good at that, you actually become more like that as you go through. So I think it's really important that whether it's the leader or the team, the individual, someone else, it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's looking at it from a different perspective. If you imagine a room full of mirrors, you're the same, but you're seeing yourself from 30-degree angle, 50-degree angle, in some cases double, because it's a mirror reflecting on a mirror and seeing the back of the head. So the whole, I think you mentioned earlier about the barber, you have to put the seat down because she's only 5'8". But what do? They put the mirror behind your head so that you can see the back of your head.
Exactly.
That's not for you. You don't see the back of your head ever.
No.
It's for other people. But
No.
you want to be respectable in all shapes and forms. So I think that's really, really important, that there's a lot more to personal development within any sort of arena, whether it's corporate job, sports, just your general life as a parent even. How are you treating your kids? How are you treating your staff? How are you treating your employees, your manager? Because if you're not a good employee, you will never be a good manager, as they say, because you can't even listen to instructions. How are you then going to listen to your own instructions without being forced to do things and manage? So I think there's loads that you said there that was fantastic, really.
All right. Thank you.
So we've talked a bit about leadership. Moving to teams then.
Yeah.
Does that sort of form part of the same structure, or is there something different?
It does. It does really. The thing about teams is the difficulty is everybody tends to operate as an individual in a team. They don't put the team first. They don't put the we of the team first, and everything is the team. You see it a lot in sport. You'll see an interview after a football match, and they'll say, "Oh, that was a great goal," and those that are team players will say, "Thanks very much, but it was a team effort. in order for me to get the ball in the back of the net, this and this happened to play. So we play as a team, and we got the right result, and it's the right result for the team and the fans. We need to apply that mindset more, but we tend to be selfish in the way we think about, oh, where's my next promotion, or so and so is doing X, Y, Z, and they're making my life difficult, or I did my job, but they didn't do their job. That's not really teamwork. Teamwork is there's a really good exercise by a lady called Dr. Brené Brown, and she has an exercise called +1. And she says, if you have a your to-do list, she said, add an extra task on that do list for the day. And that task is not for you. That task is for another person. It's simply to ask them, how can I help you? Or to do something for them without them knowing, which is obviously more powerful, but to do something for them, but without taking any credit. And when we cultivate that in people start to understand that we depend on each other. If you think about this podcast, you and I are talking, but we depend on so many people. Someone made the table, someone made the lights, someone made the microphones, someone's operating the sound and the video for us, and therefore, someone created the building that we're in and made it warm, and we forget that. And it's so easy when we have this sort of blinkered, selfish outlook of being on a team. It's kind of like, well, where's my next move? And you're getting in my way, or I'll use you because you're really good and you'll help me get my next step up. And I think that's really problematic. It costs. I did a rough calculation, and I'm happy for people to challenge me on it. But for a 50-person business, it costs about £225,000 a year in lost money, wasted on misalignment, miscommunication, and unresolved conflict. Well, wouldn't you want some of that back if you could all learn to work together? Because it's actually not hard. A lot of it is just putting the ego away. A lot of it is looking after the other person first before you look after yourself.
100%. And I think that people nowadays, they want to be, if you make the analogy a football team, people want to be the Messi, Ronaldo, where they get all the plaudits. But actually, for them to score that many goals, it requires a whole structure behind them that they are tracking Messi's runner, because Messi's not going to track, because he needs to be like blitzkrieg, Hitler, go for the weakest point with all of your force. Why would you want him tracking back when he can stay there and he's going to cause maximum damage? People want that, and people don't want to be the one that actually helps the whole team actually win things. Because look, Barcelona or Real Madrid, they win a lot because everyone understands their roles. Yes, it might not be the beautiful role that they want, but unfortunately, not everyone can be the same. I'm not 6'7", and I'm not running 100 meters in 11 seconds, under 10 seconds. Therefore, I do not have the physical capabilities to be a 100-meter sprinter. But there are other things that I have that align me to other particular roles. And sometimes we want things that we aren't. And I think that can be a hindrance. And maybe, as you said, the loss of 225,000, I think you said, that maybe people want things that aren't part of their role, and you're misaligning because I want credit for that. And maybe that's not the way to be. Maybe it's aligning the whole team in order to get the end goal and everyone benefits.
I think so, and I think you can gear things up in such a way that everybody wins, by being the best of who they are and good at what they do. It's almost, not quite, but it's almost finding the square peg and putting them in the square hole and go, you're really good at that, and you're better than Messi. Messi can't do that. So what we need you to do that, and do that really, really well, because without that, we won't win as a team. And by the way, we all get a team bonus when we win.
100%. I like that. I like that instead of pulling away from what you can't dribble like Messi. That's why you can't do that.
That's why you're brilliant at what you do.
Opposite. We're not talking about what you can't do. What you can do. You can defend the best in this team. You read the game better than anyone else in this team. And I think that's a really, really important point. Don't point out what you can't do. Point people to what they can do.
Have you ever seen the film Moneyball?
Yes, awesome film.
Awesome film. Well, that's all about finding all the misfits that don't do it, but playing them in such a way that they confounded the league, and they actually won the baseball league because they took people that were super, super talented at one thing and just played them there rather than making them generalists. And that's how they win. And I think that's really important. I think that's because we are so unique as human beings. I think if we paid more attention to finding out what the gifts are each person brings to the table, showing them that they can trust those gifts and that there is a place for them, and celebrating them regularly and frequently when they're displayed, then I firmly believe that you can elevate a team performance quite rapidly um, from a very base starting point.
I think the other thing with that film, if I remember it rightly, I've not seen it for probably 10 years now, maybe 8 years. The other thing that they did was, yes, they look at the statistics of that individual player, but the other thing they did was players that were overlooked because they didn't look the right part, or they had a bit of a weird action with their swing or whatever. And that created a discrepancy in the value. The value for what they actually did was more than what people were willing to pay for them because of the fact they looked a bit dodgy or they weren't pleasing to the eye. But they looked past that. And I think that's awesome that sometimes people can look aggressive, but you actually speak to them. They're the nicest people you'll ever meet. Big, strong people are like that. They're huge. You're like, wow, he's scary. He's nicer than the 5'6" bloke who's a little terrier.
Yeah.
I know short man syndrome, you can go into all of that, but there is a thing of looking past the image that you see and looking
Well, I
at
think really good
fundamentals.
leaders do that. Leaders see potential in others that they can't see for themselves. I remember a story happened to me. I was working for a company called Equifax years and years ago, and a new director joined, and I was really ticked off because I was trying desperately to get a job title that was assistant director, because I thought it would make I'd be really important and I'd be successful because I had this job title. Or nonsense. And he took me on one side when he arrived, and he said, "Look, you're really not doing yourself any favors. Sort yourself out." And then about a month later, because I kind of went, "What do you mean? Who are you to tell me that?" I think I was in my late 20s, so I was fairly arrogant. And he called me into his office one day and he said, "So I just wanted to tell you that we've managed to get the board to approve a grant for you to go and do an MBA at Henley." And my jaw just fell through the floor. And he saw something in me that I didn't see. And I am always grateful for that. And the lesson that taught me was to always look past the gaps in the fences to see potential.
Do you think he purposely let you ponder on that for a while?
I have no idea. I've never asked him. We've kept in touch over the years, and he's always been supportive, and I've thanked him profusely because it did set me on a course that it gave me an entry ticket into some rooms that I might not have otherwise got into, and it taught me a lot. It gave me a life experience that actually 30 grand was cheap, and because it gives you a network of friends for life, and you can't buy that, not really. So I've no idea if that, but as I say, the lesson I took from it was to look at someone and say, okay, you're behaving, and what it taught me was that when someone exhibits a behavior that's a little left of center, or maybe it's slightly antisocial, or maybe it's withdrawn, what that indicates is that behavior says there's an unmet need underneath that behavior. So I'm less interested in the behavior, and I'm more interested in, what do you need? What are you not getting? And usually, often, it's, I'm not being seen, I'm not being listened to and heard, and I'm not being believed. We all struggle for that at some point in our lives, for that kind of attention. And it's one of the most powerful things you can do, is sit with someone without judgment and see them, hear them, and believe what they're telling you.
Definitely, people just want to be noticed for their hard work.
Everyone does. Everyone wants to be included.
isn't it?
Everyone wants, it's a basic collective tribal whatever word you want to use, we are wired to connect. We move in herds, for want of a word. But, we are group species as human beings, and we want to be together and to belong and to matter to other people. It's extremely powerful. It's wired into our neurobiology. Our neurology works that way. When we're included and when we feel we belong and when we feel we matter, we're part of the group. And then we feel safe. When we feel safe, we relax in our body, our breathing shifts, and we become much more open and expansive in how we speak and how we behave.
It's the whole. A lot of people have more of a fear of public speaking than dying.
Yes,
Public speaking is higher on the list than death.
that's true.
And again, that comes from what you just said, the tribal rejection of my ideas are terrible, I sound stupid, imposter syndrome, fear of failure, fear of rejection, all of that
those
mixed
things.
into one. And it's all comes back to psychology, doesn't it? Whatever it is you're talking about, it's how could, even coming back to monitoring yourself, that comes from, first of all, can I think outside the box? Can I be outside the box looking at myself? And you have to have that thought first, whether you generate that yourself or whether someone has to point it out to you. And that's why I asked, do you think that that manager did that on purpose? I can't remember the name of the effect, but it's something along the lines of an unresolved story sticks in the mind, or when someone asks you like an open question, you don't really get an answer for it. It circulates, which is why TV shows have cliffhangers,
Yeah, they have open loops.
open loops. I can't remember the name of the actual effects, but
It's called the Zeigarnik
that's
effect.
Zeigarnik effect. That's the badger, and I think that's maybe what he did there, and that was a clever
That may-
piece of work.
Yeah, it was really clever, and he was the sort of guy, as I learned later, that he did that with whoever he met. That's how he was in the world. He tried to leave people better than when he found them, and I think for me, that's a really good maxim and a model to follow. Is to say, and I guess it's why I do what I do. It's how can I help you be better, but not tell you to be better or say do it my way, but encourage you through questioning, listening, and conversation to say, so what's going on? What's working? What's hard? Can I help you with that?
I think the losers tend to have the opposite thought.
I was full of losers.
No, but I don't mean losers in that respect. I mean like winners and losers, not losers in terms of their like
Even then, I would say, think about the Olympics is the way I think about it. How many athletes go to the Olympics when it happens? It's several thousand.
Yeah,
How many medals are there? Several hundred.
yeah,
So the ratio of athletes to winning medals begs the question, why do you do it? And when we fall in love with the process of belonging and pushing ourselves and driving, it's not really about the medals. The medals are the icing on the cake, which is great. And that's what the press and the media love and crowds love. But if you ask the participants themselves, they would say, actually, that was just a happy byproduct of what I did.
exactly. And what I meant by that was that if you focus on giving something, giving the best performance, giving to other people, giving your best service, the other stuff happens anyway. If you're always like, what's in it for me, is what I meant by the loser attitude.
Gotcha.
What's in it for me? Oh, I'm not doing anything for you. Me. Although you could get short-term benefit, the long-term benefit's not going to be good for you. People get to realize your reputation, what you're like. You then get less opportunities, etc., etc., etc. So I think there is a correlation between the value that you provide and your success and success
that's
is
true.
a general
I think
word.
that's very true.
So I think that's where I was going with that,
Gotcha.
essentially. So teams and leaders. So what other sort of things do you deal with regards to management consultancy? Is financing side as well, or is it?
No, I don't do
individual?
finances. I'll be honest. Whilst I can hack a spreadsheet, I wouldn't put me in charge of a spreadsheet. I leave that to people that know what they're doing. I work well with people, finding out how people tick. I started my journey in 2007 learning how to do that. So I've been doing it for a while now. And I'm constantly learning and updating my knowledge, and everybody is so different. No two people are alike, no two situations the same. So you always meet someone and you're thinking, okay, how can I help? Can I help? And some, you're not for everyone. It doesn't always work. But you try and pass them on to other people who might be able to help if they're interested in doing the work.
So is there a framework that you use for your sort of services or?
I use several tools. I usually start, if we're doing the awareness thing, I'll use a thing called the leadership circle profile. There are many tools out there, and the reality is the purpose of a tool is to start a conversation. I like the leadership circle profile because it gets to what drives you on the inside. What are the inner assumptions you're making? What is the inner thinking that's driving the outward behavior? And you get a measure of that compared to other people around the world. And I think that's a great start point. You can start to see, how am I reactive? Where am I reactive? And then you start to think, well, I wonder where that comes from. Oh, I know where that comes from. And then you look at, how am I creative? Can I speak truth to power, and can I do it with civility? Do I make promises and do I keep them? Do I help teams? Do I mentor people? Do I think about the system? Do I think about the community? Do I get results at the end of the day? That's important. So the leadership circle tool helps me help people go, I see where I am on the map now. And you kind of go, okay, so if you're there on the map, where do you want to get to? And then they can choose. I make suggestions and I say, well, if I was in your shoes and thinking about where you want to go and how you want to develop and grow, I'd go here, but where do you want to go? And so we make a plan and we work individually to then practice the micro skills of development. If you're going to climb a mountain, then you need to figure out the skills needed to do that. There's a similar one for teams that we look at. How do people show up together? What's the culture you have today? What's the culture you want? There's one team about a year ago I worked with, and they all said, oh, we want this brilliant culture. And they said, okay, what culture have you got? And it was the complete opposite of the one they got. And we go, okay, got some work to do then. And it's been great because they've gradually been making progress along those ways. So I use those tools. I'll then use a values inventory, which is really understanding. People think about values as like words on a wall. And that's not what values is. Values is behaviors that bring you joy and results. So it's okay to say, well, I believe in integrity. Okay, that's a great value. So how does that show up in behaviors, and how do you measure, and how do you know, and how do you feel when you're acting in integrity? How important is that to you? And we end up with what I call a big five. What are the five? I know there's 4 points of the compass, but for this compass, there's five. What are the 5 points of the compass that are going to drive you forward? That says, yes, I'm going to do that. No, I'm not going to do that. And then you've got a true north for the direction you're going to go. The next bit is really around, how are you showing up? So I developed a thing called the Grace Framework. And the Grace Framework is a series of tools built around the mnemonic GRACE, so GRACE, and I'll tell you what those are in a minute, that help you decide how to show up. So when I talk about coaching, I sound like a school teacher sometimes. People say, how does your coaching work? Tell us the process. And I go, well, it's really simple. It's 4 steps. First step is wake up. Second step is clean up. Third step is grow up. And the last step is show up. Well, some people look at me and go, excuse me, can you say that again?
Yeah.
I go, yeah, I know it's shorthand. Wake up means become aware. What things are you not aware of that you need to become aware of, so that you can choose how you're going to move differently in the world?
But on that, is there things that you are aware of that you're not aware of? And then there's things that you're not aware of that you're not aware of.
Correct.
Essentially.
Yeah. That's, I can't think of it now. It's something window. Anyway, yes.
Overton window and Overton window.
Not the Overton window. I'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
Because I've just got a blank. But yes, there are things you are aware of that you're aware of, things that you're aware of that others are aware of, things you're not aware of that others are aware of, and there are things that that exist that neither you're aware of and other people aren't aware of, which is very complicated. But it's a useful guide to figure out how you're going to develop and grow, because as someone who is going to influence other people, You want to understand, what impact am I having on other people? What are the things I do that sometimes rub you up the wrong way, but not them up the way? And what are the things I do that rub them up the wrong way that don't bother you? And how do I behave in that? And where am I inconsistent? Where do I say I'm going to do, I make a promise, but I consistently break the promises, and I go, yeah, I keep my promises. And you go, I think we need to talk about that. So that's really what we're trying to do is with grace. And then I always thought it weird that, the idea of emotional intelligence, that between a stimulus and response, there's a gap. And in that gap, we can choose how we respond. Everyone can tell me some version of that. I used to say to people, tell me what emotional intelligence is. And I would get some answer along those lines. And then I'd say, okay, how do you do it? And then it went really quiet because people didn't really know. And so grace is the answer. In my answer, I'm not saying it's the right answer, but it's an answer that helps fill that knowing doing gap. The problem with and this is where I think a lot of leadership education goes wrong. It does a lot of the knowing. It'll teach you how to know. We'll sit in lectures and we'll listen to podcasts and we'll read stuff. But it's a bit like martial arts. You can watch all the films, you can read all the books. Until you get on the mat, you don't actually learn anything.
There's definitely practical application, teaches you a lot more.
And I think that's what's missing and case studies aren't it, and breakout groups aren't it. What matters is getting into the real world in the middle of a business and trying something out. And I go back to, so how was that? What was easy? What did you find easy? What was difficult? Okay, how do we help you get over that difficulty? What support can we put around you? Do you need some skills? Do you need some practice? Do you need hand holding is the wrong exercise, but do you need a hand on the shoulders? You do it because it's a bit nerve wracking, like a first presentation.
Yeah.
As a skill, it's kind of like, okay, what can I do to put the virtual hand on the shoulder to support you in that environment if that's the first time you've ever done it? Again, it's like flipping on the mat in martial arts. When you do a flip for the first time, you have no idea what's going to happen. And by the way, you've spent your entire life being told, don't fall over.
Yeah.
And here we are, we're going, we need you to turn head over heels and fall on your back and do that safely. And
Great.
going, I don't think so.
Yeah.
So there's ways of teaching it that build that skill up very incrementally and build that confidence and that self-trust that you can do that thing. So eventually you're throwing yourself around like a 2-year-old and giggling because it's so much fun when it happens.
You do Aikido, don't you? And I do judo. So
yeah, so when you're being thrown a shoulder throw for the first time, that's pretty damn scary because it's you fall from what feels like quite a height.
Especially if someone lands on you, on your ribs.
Yes. Oh, that's no fun. Yes, no.
Even with your break falls, it still doesn't.
No, particularly with judo.
Yeah.
So you understand that there are stages of giving people and supporting people until you can take the stabilizers off and go, right, let's get on the mat and let's spar for a little bit. And then you get thrown and you're pretty comfortable. And even if people land on you, you kind of go, you know how to protect yourself to some degree in most of those situations. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to take a live environment and practice those skills. So the skills in the framework, grace. So the G is all about grounding. So we said earlier, leadership's all about psychology. Actually, it's biology and psychology. It's both, because our biology controls our autonomic nervous system, and our autonomic nervous system is the mechanism that kicks in when we're afraid, we go into fight flight. When we feel relaxed and safe, we go into rest and digest. Broadly too, there are other elements of that system. So we want to be in a place where when we feel safe, because when we feel safe, we operate, we're relaxed, and we do the best of our ability.
Yeah.
When we're afraid and we're in flight fight, we're sort of a bit clenched and
or freeze as well.
Yeah, and the brain fogs up, and we don't think, and we don't have clarity. So that's what we do. So grounding, which is the G of grace, that's all about what are the different techniques that we can use to ground us. Well, breathing us will get there. Grounding can be simply changing our stance, to sit lower, tuck our tail and breathe lower into the body, look forward, relax the eyes. Just those 3 things on their own will start to take you into grounding and centeredness. We can imagine a gold thread coming out of our head and sort of elongating our spine, and then just settling into our body and making sure, our shoulders sit over our chest, sits over our hips, sits over our knees, sits over our ankles. And we're aligned but we're physically aligned, but our nervous system is aligned as well. So that's the biology.
I love the biology thing because I've been toying with this idea for the last month or so. The question is, do we have freedom of choice or is it determinism or free will essentially? And what I've come to think is that if we are based on all of our past experience, basically, and we know that, we've had a bad childhood or only read one book rather than 1,000, can we do things today, like you've been saying, these sort of activities, in order to change how our mind thinks and creates and comes to decisions based on this new information in the future? And I think that's a really important point as well, is that we can, if we didn't know something and we now know that, it affects all of our decisions moving forward in that particular area. I think what you're saying is there's a framework that you can apply to make sure that you can learn these sorts of things, or at least reflect on your own shortfalls. The trajectory then changes to another direction. Instead of like cognitive bias, it's the opposite. You're taking new information on board and changing your assumption moving forward. The Bayes theory, I think it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, to do that, instead of just going back to what you said at the start, self-image and how you see yourself, is if you're getting information that you are immediately discrediting to that because you're like, that's bullshit. Don't agree with that. That's not going to help you to get better moving forward.
Well, it's the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset, to use that analogy. But it's also, brain neuroplasticity allows us to change the neural pathways. So the way I mess with some people is I go, fold your arms, and they fold their arms in the way that they would normally do it without thinking. I go, all right, fold them the other way. And some people can do it, and some people go, hang on a minute. And that's new neural pathways. Yeah, they have to think about it. And they go, all right, practice it.
Yeah.
And after about 20 times, they go, oh, I can do this. I can do both. And you go, well, that's a simple example how you've just simply rewired the neural pathways in your brain to learn a new skill. And you can do that for anything. What you need is someone to open that up to you and make it safe for you to do that, or to create the awareness that the behaviors that you have. So I when I tell my story, I used to weigh 266 pounds, which is just under 20 stone. I used to smoke 40 cigarettes a day. I used to drink a bottle of wine a day. And there were a whole bunch of other things.
Normal Tuesday.
Enormous. But I got to a point where it was very clear I was unhappy, but I couldn't figure out why. But all those things were sort of an expression of my unhappiness. And I needed to learn that was what was happening to even begin to start to change. And the change started with going to a medical checkup with a nurse, put the blood pressure cuff on me, blew it up, walked away and came back, looked at the monitor and said, oh dear. I said, what? She said, your blood pressure is really, really high. I said, okay. She said, you need to go and see the doctor. I said, okay, I'll see him next month. She said, no, you need to go and see him today.
Wow.
And that was just enough of a jolt for me to go, oh, I don't think I want to die. I need to figure out. And in this whole mishmash of so I got to the awareness bit. Remember we said wake up. So I did the little wake up thing. Then I needed to do the cleanup, which was I don't need to smoke anymore, which I eventually did 18 months later, but then chewed about 7 packs of chewing gum a day, which was a different habit that was equally unhealthy in different ways.
Yeah.
But eventually got to a point where I gave up completely. And then alcohol followed, and I managed to get off that and sort of. And eventually, as I cleaned up various bits, it's like cleaning an attic. You clean one part of the attic and all of a sudden that becomes nice. Then you clean another part of the attic and then you empty all the junk and you kind of open the curtains and you go, oh, it's a nice view in here.
It's a keystone habit, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like one habit leads to others. Like the alcohol leads to cigarettes, leads to more kebabs in the evening because you can't go to cook and have a kebab. Then you're late for work. So I think certain habits,
yeah,
and for everyone it might be different, can be the catalyst for all habits in that particular
All of those habits are comforting habits because we have an internal experience. It's called interoception. That's uncomfortable. We have a feeling inside of us, and we kind of go, oh, don't like that. Tell you what, and I'm feeling disconnected, or I'm feeling yuck. So I'll do something that will make me feel better, whatever that is, just to make that feeling go away. So whether it's cigarettes, alcohol, whatever, doesn't really matter. That feeling goes away until it returns. And then we just get on this cycle of, I feel better, I feel rubbish, I feel better. Instead of examining what's the unmet need underneath that's causing you to do that, and then changing the feeling. And then there are techniques to actually change feelings, because they're usually rooted in memories. Because what happens is we have a new experience, and our immediate human behavior is to in an instant go, where have I had this experience before? Am I safe? Because we're scanning the environment all the time to go, am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? And if we have a new experience and we go, oh yeah, I know what that is. And last time that happened, it was okay. Oh, it's all right. Whereas if we do what's called a transderivational search of the brain, and we kind of go, oh, I don't know what this is. I'm a bit scared. I've currently been doing Pilates for about the last 6 months. And I do it on a reformer machine, which has got a moving platform. And occasionally I stand on the platform trying to balance. And because my hip flexors aren't quite strong enough yet, I'll be quite wobbly. I go, oh, this doesn't feel, and I'm trying to figure out, is this safe? And when I can't find that, oh, I've done this before and it's all right, relax into the movement. It's kind of like, no, I'm real scared. And then I'll step off and I can't do this.
It's coming back to the whole comfort zone thing, isn't it? Your brain automatically, when it's unknown waters, it goes onto alert mode. Is it good? What's bad? I've not done this before.
And that's your sympathetic nervous system kicking in.
This is it. And this is
That's why I say it's biology, and it's really important. So grace is about getting your biology in order. In fact, you could almost say that the most important job of a leader is to actually manage their nervous system, to manage their state first. Because until you're grounded, when you're afraid, your parts of your parasympathetic nervous system shut down, so you can't think as clearly as before. So you need to get to a place where you are grounded, so that all your sensing capability, your sensory acuity, can be switched on.
So like low stress, sort of being like stoic, and
that's
not
right.
being too emotional.
But it's coming to presence. People talk about presence, and people think it's a personality trait, or it's jazz hands, and it really isn't. It's where's your nervous system, and are you absolutely present in the moment with the person in front of you, and they know it.
Yeah.
And that's really key. So that's G, and there's a whole bunch of different things you can do for grounding. There's things you can do for long-term practice as well. And I don't tell people what to do. I make suggestions, but I let people choose what works for them best, as long as they go and do it and practice it. The R is for resolve, and resolve really is to get over the problem with SMART goals. The problem with SMART goals is that they're not always yours. Someone gives you a goal, they go, your goal is to sell this many widgets. Well, that's not your goal, is it? And I want people to think about setting an intention, which is different. So in November, just gone, I failed my next black belt test. We do a mock.
Yeah.
To go, are you ready?
Second and third dan kind of things.
Yeah. And I wasn't ready. And I'm okay with that, because the goal is to get the belt, to pass the test. So if I don't do it in November, I'll do it in March, which is the next opportunity. And if I don't do it in March, that's okay too. I'll do it in June. But I've still got the goal that I'm going to do. So it's having a goal that you hold on to lightly enough that you still keep your eye on it and want to attain it, but you don't get caught up in it and hold it so tightly that when it doesn't happen, you kind of fall apart and you go on a bender, or
Love it.
You project it to someone else.
Love it.
Because you feel uncomfortable.
It was something that one of my old sales managers said to us, and he was quite good at this sort of thing. Instead of, as you said, this is your target, you must sell this number of products or services, he would actually turn it back on you. So if you hit target, what would you spend the money on? Some people will travel the world. Some people, I'll buy my kids this new bike. So he made the target now the consultant's target, because like, actually, that's right. If I do, I'm going to earn 15 grand, 20 grand bonus, pre-tax, of course, that I can now have my goals of traveling or for the kids. So instead of saying you must hit target, he turned it on them. And I think that's really important that you said about goals, is having your own goal that is also loose as well, because we don't want to just make it that if we don't hit this goal, life just falls apart.
Well, intrinsic motivation is far more powerful than anyone externally trying to motivate you. You've
Absolutely.
got a reason to do it. You will do it. That's why having that reason is what pulls you along when it's 11 o'clock at night on a Sunday. And, with my business, my partner's calling me, "Are you coming to bed yet?" It's 11 o'clock on a Sunday. As a consultant, I would never have done that. I wouldn't have gone anywhere near work. And it's because, I've got a reason for doing things that I really enjoy. So that's what R is about. A is about acceptance. And to some extent, this is the key to it, is acceptance of self. Accepting that you're a messy human being, accepting that you don't know it, accepting that you can learn, accepting that it's okay to ask for help. All these things become issues of acceptance, but also accepting others. That doesn't mean you roll over and, if someone's behaving badly towards you or someone's expressing opinions or being violent, it doesn't mean that you're going to go, "Oh, well, that's all right. I accept it." It's kind of like, I accept you as a human being. I don't accept your behavior. And therefore I make a conscious decision how I want to respond to that behavior, which may be, I simply step away. It would be called detaching with love. It's kind of like, I love you as a human being. I think you're great. As a human being, you're a beautiful human behavior, but you're behaving like a bit of an idiot right now. And I choose not to be in the company of people that behave like idiots. When you don't behave like an idiot, come talk to me and let's go do fun stuff. So that's acceptance of others. And then there's acceptance of system. We live in a system. I wish we lived in a system that didn't require money, because there is enough of everything in the world for no one to be poor, for no one to be without shelter.
Resource-based economy,
Yeah.
opposed to capitalist.
Yeah, I'm not anti-capitalist. I accept the way it works.
Yeah.
And I accept that some people think that the one with the most wins. Okay, fine. I choose to place my focus elsewhere, to say, how can I help other people in whatever way, however small, rather than, yes, I need to be comfortable. Yes, I wouldn't want to be without shelter. That would be very naive to say otherwise. So it's that acceptance thing that's really important. What those first three of the circle do is allow you to create, and to create fearlessly. One of the most scary things you can have is a blank piece of paper. And for people to go, right, let's invent something that's never been invented before. Because the thinking that got us to here is not the thinking that's going to get us to where we need to go. And people go, that's a bit scary. I could be wrong. It could be messy. I wrote, I'm learning to write music at the moment. And I wrote something the other night for my podcast. I was going to do a podcast theme. It's like, I am determined to write my own podcast theme. And I was going out in the evening to train on the mat. And as I'd done like an hour's work, and I got my usual 8 bars of stuff. But as I was listening to it, I was going, oh, that's really cool. Sounds great. Yeah, I'll finish that off when I get home. So I got home, put the headphones on, hit play, and I went, ooh, that's a bit yuck. Oh no, I'm deleting that. That's rubbish. But when I left, I thought it was great.
Because when you come back to it and you
Yeah.
look at it with different set of ears or eyes in different cases.
But now I accept that that's all part of the process of learning to write. Whereas before it would be like, oh, I'll give up. It's too hard.
I think perfectionism is actually a negative for a lot of people. Is that
I think it's an identity.
It delays them starting. Procrastination. I'm not going to do. Someone I can't remember it was a friend's brother. So you should come down judo, mate. Like, it's good for your fitness. It'll teach you a few things. Good self-defense, good as an actual sport as well. And he says, no, I don't want to come because I'm going to be crap. I want to be the best. I was like, you do understand the people who are the best were at one point at the beginning like you. They were the worst. They've been thrown. Someone who's better than me has been thrown more than I have.
Mm-hmm.
And that works exponentially up to 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and whatever. And that's such a bad attitude, because if you're a perfectionist, you want to always just be the best from the outset. you will never start anything. You'll procrastinate. You have to be, I think Jordan Peterson said it, it's better doing something badly than not doing it.
Everyone wants the view, but nobody wants the climb.
Absolutely. So Jordan Peterson says it's better to do something badly than not at all. And I think that's really important, that we should try things. We should be okay with being bad at something.
But our education system doesn't encourage that because, everybody's got to be top of the class. Everybody's got to win a prize at sports day. Schools have got to perform because if they're not top of the league table, they're a bad school. And I think we need to reevaluate what it means to win, and to enable people to understand that winning isn't the prize, winning is the process. And everybody can win. Not everybody can win the prize, and that's okay. And it's not really about the prize. You ask any sports person. I remember one of the rugby players, Johnny Wilkinson, when he kicked the winning World Cup goal at the rugby years ago. And he said after the game, they'd won the World Cup and they got the trophy. And he said, we woke up in the morning and he'd never been so depressed in all his life. And he couldn't understand why.
Finally achieved it.
Yeah, finally achieved it. And he was kind of like, oh,
Where's the goal?
what was that all about? Who am I now? And this is what we need to teach people is to say, what is the process that you need to fall in love with, whatever that is, whether it's building a house or building a car or racing or riding horses or running a farm, doesn't matter. What is it that gets you up every morning because you just love it? And we don't encourage that. We try and stream people into, it's got to be a STEM subject. And don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-STEM at all.
Yeah.
I'm anti not looking past people and saying, what is it that you bring to the table that I can see that if I can encourage you, get you to a place that you're going to have more joy in your life, and you're not going to wait until you're 50 and go, my life sucks. Why?
Absolutely. And it's a big thing in Asian families, especially.
Okay.
Doctors, solicitors, accountants, engineers. That is perceived as better in some ways than doing your own thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's not seen as great as a job, and doing actually better than that role. It's just seen as, oh, you're not super smart or whatever. But I think it's bad that your whole sole purpose of being born is to work in a corporate job. That's what your whole life's ambition is, as opposed to create something. I think that's quite a negative, I think, in some ways.
I think it is, but I think our parents are trying to do the best for us and trying to protect us because the world runs on money. So if you've got money, you'll have a house, you'll have food on the table, and you'll be warm and you'll be clothed. And if you're in that bracket, you're doing better than sort of 10% of the world. So I get that. And in countries with large populations, then that competition is even tougher than it is here to be seen and to be seen and be heard. And we don't appreciate that until we have conversations with people to say, well, explain to me how it works, where you're from, and that sort of thing.
The whole Maslow's hierarchy of needs, isn't it? You need food, shelter, and then belonging, relationships, all the way up to activation. I just want to come back to what you said though about the Johnny Wilkinson thing. So Craig Fallon, judo player,
yes,
he won the world championships young, 18, 19, 20 or something.
Okay.
And again, he'd worked his whole life. He was on the Olympic cycle and all these sorts of things. And unfortunately, he killed himself not long afterwards because he'd gone back to work in a petrol station. And again, it's the realization for a lot of people that this goal isn't going to, you're not going to get like a lottery ticket check, or the game ends and, like if you play a computer game when you're a child or whatever, and at the end, that's it, you win. It says you win and that's it, finished. People tend to have that psychological thought that that's it, life's completed, but it's not.
No.
That's just part of the, as you said, process. It was a great word to describe it. It is a process. And sometimes once you finish one goal, you do see a lot of people depressed after they've achieved it because they need to reassess what the next goal is, the next chapter of their life. Maybe they tried something and it didn't work. We talked earlier about sometimes it's not the door you knock on, it's a random door that presents itself, and that was the one to go through. And you don't always know where life's going to lead you. It's easy in hindsight, and you said something earlier about that as well.
It is, and I think that's what we need to encourage is a much more open view of what life is really about and what it means to win, and what is it we're really trying to do. And then that becomes really complex because then you've got to look at the agendas because our education system is out of date. It was essentially built for creating compliant, productive workers to work in factories. Well, whilst those exist, the majority of them don't exist in this country anymore. They've gone abroad. So you look at it and you say, okay, so what is education really about? And then you look at how funds and cycles of funds work in the economy. And, I noticed, I read something the other day, and I've heard it before, SME businesses aren't ambitious enough. We need to get them to scale. And, whoops, I just got cracked. um, so if when we look at the economy, we've got how the cycle of funds flow around in that. And there's the complaint that says, governments are saying, oh, we need to get our SMEs to be more ambitious. We need to get them to scale up, which basically means we need to get them to earn more revenue so that they can create more taxes, put more taxes into the pot. Got more taxes into the pot, we can do more of the government's agenda. And people don't want to, people look at it now and they go, well, why do I want that hassle? Why do I want that headache when I'm perfectly happy running my business as it is? I've got a workforce of X, Y, Z that I love to be with doing what I'm doing. Why do I want to go and create all the hassle of having an IPO, listing on the stock market, and then being ordered around by a bunch of people who are basically just interested in money?
It's the whole fisherman story. Have you
Yeah.
heard it?
Yes.
When he's basically fishing and someone comes up to him and says, why are you just fishing? Why don't you start fishing more and selling it? Why do I want to do that? And it basically all comes round to the fact that even after doing all of that, you can sell the business and do what he was already doing in the first place,
Yeah.
which was just sitting down, enjoying with his son, fishing. And I think that's a really good analogy, a story that
It's a super
shows
story.
that it's not always about more, because if at the end you're going to do exactly what you're doing now, why not do that at this point?
Because we listen to the propaganda, and because when we don't follow the prescribed route or the consensus of this is what a good life is, then we feel that we're on the edge of society or we're othered in some other way. And that's really uncomfortable. Our nervous system doesn't like that. You only need to look at what excommunication tends to mean for our nervous, when we're excluded and we're created as an outcast, our body feels threatened and we need other people to be around to survive. So, I mean, if you look at babies in the Romanian orphanages, because they didn't have human contact, then sadly they died. So we know that it's important to have that. And I think what's interesting at the moment is if we look at how technology tends to divide us, it keeps us, oh, we'll get on a Zoom call. We don't have to meet. We met today in person. It's fantastic. I'm really enjoying this experience because it's a totally different experience when we're on. The online experience is good, but there's something about being in person that we respond to unconsciously as human beings to go, no, we need this in our lives. And therefore, anything that now pushes us to be online or keeps us separate or others in some way, I've almost got like a sixth sense to go, no, I don't like that. It can be as simple as, automatic tills in supermarkets. And you kind of go, well, where are the people? And you go, well, yeah, I know from a money point of view that creates more profit, but what does that do to us as a species, as a society? And is that really where we want to go? And who's allowing that? And who's thinking like that? And this comes back to leadership. How are we being in the world? And what conditions are we creating for people to succeed? Whether that's in a family, in a small business, whether it's in a government department, whether it's in a community or a larger organization, or even an organization that spans geographical boundaries. And it's really thinking about those issues as a system and saying, yeah, I know it's complicated, but is this really the system we want?
I think the human thing is massive.
It is.
And you mentioned supermarkets, but even the wombles on the street who used to give you parking tickets, now it's machines, and you're slowly seeing more and more jobs being replaced by machines. Now, okay, they are quite basic sort of undertakings, but as AI and things get more complex, there's going to be more complex roles taken at a mass scale, and I think that's going to have a detrimental impact to society because, look, humans are lazy by nature. If we can do something quickly and easily, we will do that.
Mm.
Unfortunately, it does take away from your skill development.
Mm.
You lose skills over time. The calculator, for example, before that, people were very good at mental maths. Now, not so much. And what will happen, I think, over time is things will get lost. We can't build the pyramids anymore. And that's a whole different conversation. But just a point to prove is that just because something happened, we can lose abilities to do things over time.
I think partly yes and partly no. I think there is a curiosity and a creativity in us as human beings that says we invented this once before. If we need to invent it again, we will.
Good point, actually.
And I think it's easy to lose sight of. It's easy to believe the propaganda to say, "Oh, AI is going to do this, and AI is going to do that, and AI is going to do that, the other." And there are many use cases where I can see that it's a useful tool for human beings to use. Will it be sentient? Who knows? Who cares? I think that's a long way off. But it's a good story for the media to spin to get the media to sell whatever it is they're selling, advertising or eyeballs. I think we have to remember that our humanity, we are ingenious, we are adaptive, we are curious, and we are creative, and we work together well in teams.
But it's like you said at the start, you have to have two opposing views. Like you can look at the positives and play that out, but also look at the negative side and maybe have a view somewhere in the middle. You don't know until you've sort of played those ideas out.
Mm.
One could be that AI destroys society. The other complete opposite end is that AI does everything for us. We can just sit and chill because it is taxis, it's doing the stock market, it's doing everything.
It does my laundry, I'll be happy.
Yeah, laundry, exactly. And this is it. And I think there has to be some balance with all views. You have your view, you take the opposite, as you said, and then you maybe look at, is there something in the middle or
Yeah,
not?
and I think you have to be willing to let other people's views change you. Change doesn't happen in the center. Change doesn't happen in the majority. Change happens at the edges. And happens at the edges because we allow what happens at the edges to change our perception. We allow that change, that thing, that outlier view to go, oh, maybe I need to think differently. Maybe what I've been taught was the right thing, but actually, I hadn't realized that. Maybe I need to change. Doesn't mean I need to go the polar opposite. It just means I need to add that into my thinking and go, okay, that's helped me grow.
Yeah, definitely. And there's sometimes just one thing that you've been told, or one fact, one figure, one statistic, one point of view
Yeah.
that has completely shattered one of the beliefs that you've had for years.
That happened to me a few months ago. I was talking to a friend and we were complaining about Elon Musk at the time when he was very high profile and in the news a bit too often for my liking, but that's my own personal view. And a typical thing, Musk is this, Musk is that, all kinds of judgmental statements. And one of our friends said, "You do know he's autistic, don't you?" I went, "No." He went, "No. He apparently is medically diagnosed as autistic." I went, "Oh,
Explains a lot.
that changes quite a lot of my view on why he might be behaving the way he's behaving." Comes back to what's the behavior? What's the unmet need that's underneath that? What's driving that? And then that becomes interesting. So that was just a tiny example of that made me sit and think and go, when we think about, Donald Trump's an easy target, and I don't choose him to be a target, but it's easy to use him as an example. People struggle with his behavior and his demeanor and what he's doing, but at the end of the day, he's still a human being. And therefore, you kind of look at it and you go, okay, what's the unmet need? Where does that come from? And once you start to explore that, and you start to explore the psychology, and you start to look into trauma, and you start to understand what trauma does to people and how it rewires their brains, and how that drives certain needs, little bits of the jigsaw, not the entire jigsaw, but little things come into place, and you go, oh, that explains that, or oh, okay, maybe that's the reason why. So I think it's really important, as we think about how we're being in the world, unless we do this expansive, can I hold more than one idea and compare and contrast, and am I willing to let someone else's idea change my view and perspective, then how can we possibly play nicely with other people in the playground?
But all views have changed your view. Like, your view is not based on anything but other people's views and what you've
Correct.
read anyway.
Yeah.
He talks about one of the windows earlier, and you forgot the name, but the Overton window is like that. Society, at one point, it was that women voting was seen as bad and same-sex marriages, and now it's normal
Well,
because it's the whole
don't
Overton
get me
window.
started on the women thing.
Yeah,
Because you go back into history, you go back into the 1400s and pre-1400s, the rise of the church, what the church did, how the church subjugated women and subjugated nature, and you start to really question some of the dominant doctrines in certain organized religions, and you look at it and you go, I don't buy that anymore. But I'm willing to listen enough to take the elements that are good, my judgment of good, that make sense to me, and take them on board for me to choose how I'm going to move in the world.
we are a filtering system, aren't we?
We are, yes.
And someone said, we're coming back to the Overton window, is politicians don't change the window. They find out where the window is and put themselves in there. So if it's a right-wing discussion in the society at the moment, then the politician will say the right things to be part of that window. And
That's
it's
being
difficult.
slightly manipulative for the purpose of surviving. At the end of the day, if your livelihood depends on being popular, you're going to say things that make you popular, as opposed to looking at things and saying, really what we need to do in this society is you only need to look at Prime Minister's question times to go, can we stop behaving like children?
Yeah, it's
in the
ridiculous.
playground? Because in what other place would that be acceptable? And I don't buy, it's tradition, or this is how we do things. It's kind of like, no, can we just grow up?
I actually find it baffling, as you said, the sort of lack of compassion and the snapping at each other that you see on whether it's Question Time or any of the debate panels. And you look at it and thinking, okay, I can understand you're arguing because you've got differing views, but how this plays out to society and the people actually voting for you, they do see like petulant little children that haven't actually
You have to look at the bigger system in which that sits. So who's paying for the media?
Exactly. Yeah.
And what's driving that? I always remember Bishop Desmond Tutu, before he died, he said, if people are falling in the river and drowning, at some point we have to move upstream and say, who's pushing them in the river? And I think, we need to encourage people to develop the critical thinking skills to question, so why is that like that? What is it I don't understand yet? Or what do I need to learn? And the problem is we're not taught those skills, because think about it. Who on earth wants people to be creative? Who on earth wants people to, if you've got a workforce, the last thing that you want is for them to be creative and to have critical thinking skills. And yet those two things are the things that will help us grow and move forward faster than trying to keep a lid on it and stop it.
It's like what you said earlier about schools. You are sort of punished for asking questions, which you need to have in order to think. The other one is just listening to authority. And the other one is failing, because failing is seen as you failed bad. Where actually failing
You learn.
is the path to success. You have to fail in order to get successful. And I think that's what one of the things, amongst many others, that school has basically shaped your mind into thinking failure is bad. The other one as well that I forgot to mention is cooperation.
Yeah.
You cooperating is cheating, when actually in the world you have to cooperate business, like this podcast studio, had to cooperate with someone.
Yeah,
They've sat
wouldn't
us
be done
down here.
without it.
There's someone in the room who's doing the audio and the video and things like that, and it has to be a cooperative measure rather than that's classed as cheating, which I think is just ridiculous.
Yeah, and this is it. We need to go back and examine what we mean by certain things, and to look at what is it we are encouraging people to do, and what's the motivation for doing that.
But I think there's two sides to the coin. I think part of society wants society to keep getting better, but unfortunately, a lot of the people at the top don't. They want to keep the two sort of party system, well, not two party system, but the split of rich and poor, or those with control. Those
I don't
without.
know is the honest answer. I mean, the evidence would tend to suggest maybe, but I actually don't know that or the reasons why, or is it a group of 10 people in a room somewhere pulling all the levers? I'm not sure it is. I'm intrigued enough to follow the scent, to kind of get to learn what I can that's helpful. The other stuff, you could spend a lifetime fact checking everything, and you could spend a lifetime trying to develop the different perspectives of the different stories, to see it through different lenses, to try and be reasonable, to try and explain it. I think you need several lifetimes to get anywhere near an answer. And therefore, my chief instructor was very wise and said, don't hate what you don't understand. Understand it first before you make a judgment. And I think we're too quick to judge these days. We're all, trigger happy, or we've got digital disinhibition. We fire away on Facebook and Twitter or whatever, X or Instagram, with the comments and our thoughts, and we don't really know.
I think knowing and understanding are two different things.
They definitely are.
Talking
Yes.
back to martial arts and things. The first session, I know this throw or whatever it is, but even now
You don't know.
you now understand it more, but then you realise you thought you understood it 2 years ago or 3 years ago. So then you go in with the lens of, actually, maybe I don't even understand it at this point.
That's where I've
Because
got to. I've got.
The more we said earlier about the things that you know that you don't know, and the things that you don't know that you don't know. I think once you realise more things that you know that you don't know, and you learn those things, you find out more of the stuff that you, at that point, the things that you didn't know that you didn't know, and they now become the things that you know that you don't know, and it's like a never-ending.
I think it's hilarious. I have this theory with our martial arts. It's kind of like, we're going to teach you something, but you're not going to know what it is. The thing you learn isn't the thing you're learning. And the thing that you think you learned isn't the thing you're learning. And by the way, you never learn the thing you learn. But that's martial arts.
Literally.
It is. And I find that fascinating. And I love the process of when a little chink of a door opens and you go, oh, I think I just got a glimpse of something that's a slightly different understanding. The straightening of the back, or the straightening of the hips, or the difference that makes in terms of the effectiveness of doing something. And you kind of go, I've been doing this for 7 years. Why haven't I seen that? And that's what I talk about, the love of stuff. It's that curiosity and that openness to go, oh, actually, I'm never going to learn this, but I tell you what, I'm going to enjoy the journey of learning what it is I get to learn and understand.
I find that teaching helps massively.
Oh, yes.
So there's a study done where there was a 7-year-old. I don't know if the ages are exactly right, but the 7-year-old and the 3-year-old, and 7-year-olds helping the 3-year-old to read, basically. Okay. The question is, who do you think benefited most from that exchange? The 3-year-old who had the 7-year-old teaching them, or the 7-year-old that was teaching the 3-year-old?
I would say the 7-year-old.
The 7-year-old did, and most people would say the 3-year-old,
Yeah.
because they say, well, they've got a 7-year-old teaching them and helping them, they must get exponentially better. But it's actually the person teaching trying to consciously understand what they understand subconsciously, and teaching that to someone else. And I've learned a lot from helping out on the mat and help teach judo, probably more than actually.
Well, you have to learn it twice, don't you? You have to learn it once to be able to do it, and then you have to learn it again to be able to explain it to someone else in a myriad of ways, because there's a saying that goes, the meaning of your communication is the response you get. So if someone goes, don't get it, you kind of go, okay, that's on me, not you. I need to explain this a different way. I need to I need to find a way that gets through to you, a language or a symbol or a way of thinking that goes, oh yeah, I get it now.
100%. Everyone's different.
Yeah, everyone's different.
Everyone's
And I think, I've always been challenged by maths. And I think back to my teachers and I thought, if only you'd spent a little more time trying to get through to me, because I really didn't appreciate, I just didn't get it. It wasn't the language I spoke. And, but it didn't, and that's okay. And, I've struggled through statistics and managed to pass. So I was all right in the end.
I think, yeah, as you said, I think now a conversation's come around that people understand that people are different and there are different ways of dealing with people. Like even me at school, I was kicked out, expelled, went to private school, meant I'm a clever guy. But the softest, because I'm not putting any blame on anyone else, but as in if I was that teacher, I would have dealt with me in a slightly different way.
Yes.
Instead of saying, do this, do this, do this. Well, as you said, where do you want to go? And if I'd have said, oh, I want to be a doctor. Okay, well, what grades do you need to be a doctor? You need this. So what level of work do you need to get there? And it would have been my idea then, rather than being
Who do you need to become to
still my
achieve the goal?
fault. It happened, of course. But again, you go back and look at stuff. What did I do wrong? What was the situation?
Yeah.
Because if I'm ever in that situation where someone needs help, then I can maybe deal with them in a way that I feel like I should have been dealt with. And that's the beauty of life, isn't it? It's learning from retrospective decisions and behaviours and results in order to change your trajectory moving forward.
And I think that brings us to the last part of the GRACE framework. So we got GRAC, which was the creativity. E is embodiment. And the E of it is the practice. What is the daily ritual that you do? And to practice a particular skill and get that skill into your bones so that you can do it without thinking. And again, in a work environment, in a team's environment, we're too busy doing tasks. We're not necessarily practicing a skill. So an active listening skill. So if I'm running a presentation, am I doing an active listening skill? Well, unless I consciously think, oh, I ought to practice active listening during this particular meeting or this particular activity we're doing, then we tend not to do it. So embodiment is about what are the practices we're going to set up that you want to practice, and how are we going to reflect on those and figure out what worked, figure out what's difficult, and figure out how to support you to get better at the things that didn't work. And it's quite simple, but it's quite difficult as well, because you've got to build a discipline that says, in my diary, I'm going to mark out blocks of time that goes, this is my practice time. And I do that with my martial arts. I'm sure you do it with yours. Second thing to go in my diary is, when am I going on the mat? And I go 4 times, if I can, I go 4 times a week. And that's non-negotiable.
Yeah, 100%. And even at the minute, so I don't know if we spoke about this when we spoke last month, but I got injured in judo.
Okay.
Knee, someone's basically gone through my knee.
Ouch.
And went to the doctor's A&E the next day. They said it was meniscus. Fine. I was hobbling. A couple of weeks off, still on the mat helping teach and just doing gripping drills and whatever. I actually got my MRI results today.
Okay.
Now, I thought it was the meniscus. That's what the doctors had been saying. The physio was going off the back of that as well. But apparently meniscus is fine. It's the ACL and the MCL were scratched. So they're not torn,
Good.
but they're scratched.
Okay.
So positive in some ways that my meniscus isn't done, but also negative in that my 2 major ligaments are affected.
Yeah.
But I'm like, well, that could have been a career ender. If both your ACL and MCL done, and I'm 36 years of age, you're probably not going to get it back on the mat for 2 or 3 years being on the same level. So a year out just repairing, then a year strengthening probably, and psychologically it affects you as well. So I think there's a massive part of that regardless of the situation you're in, you can still, as you said, put time aside. I still go and do, by and large, the same number of sessions, but I don't do the full randori because obviously, injured. But now I know what it is today.
Yeah, good.
And that information, as we said, will then change what I do for the next month.
Yeah, I was going to say, you'll do something different now.
Because I thought it was a meniscus. And again, that information, it's like what you said about Elon Musk. Now you know he's autistic. Your whole perception or perspective has changed. And I think that's so important that we always have to keep getting new information to know that we were stupid 5 minutes ago. I'm smarter now after an hour and a half of being sat here than I was an hour and a half ago.
Me too.
And this is the beauty of learning from people
Mm.
and being open to ideas.
Yes.
And most people aren't like that, unfortunately, which is quite upsetting. On the flip side, I think now that there are so much more opportunities for people to learn these sorts of things on podcasts and shows and YouTube
Mm.
and whatever, people are open
There's no
to
excuse for not
ideas.
learning because libraries are free, and and whilst we still have them, you can still do that, and we can still get, you can learn so much on podcasts. You can learn a lot on YouTube, and the courses are free out there. You can learn. You just need someone to encourage you to take that first step and then support you through this bit's yucky. It's not easy. I want to be a star now. You're going to go, it's a bit more than that. There's no hacks. There's no shortcuts. Even AI won't give it you. You still need to give you a bit quicker, but you still need to put the effort in.
So here's a good question then. So we've talked about your sort of frameworks, the GRACE framework, etc., and applying that to your customers or clients, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
How would you apply that to society? If society was this business and we wanted to get to an end goal of, as you would put it, a perfect society in your own mind, because everyone's different. My perfect society is different to your perfect
Yeah,
society, I
exactly.
suppose. What sort of applications would you be using to?
Well, I'd take the same process. I'd say, what is it that drives you? What are the emotions and internal assumptions that drive your outward behaviors, and what are you happy with? And how do you want that to be different? What are your values? What brings you joy? What do you want more of? And then I'd teach you the tools to help you get more of that, and look at what are the skills you now want to learn to learn to think differently, to learn to think more widely. It's kind of like your ability to think is a cup. How do we make that a bucket? How do we create that expansion so that you can hold more? And that's a step-by-step program that we build together based around, well, what is it you want to do? What brings you joy? What lights you up in the world? What's your true north compass? And how do we help you get there as a business and team? If it's a team and there's people on the bus that don't want to be on the bus, okay, that's fine. If you don't want to be on the bus, great. At least we know, at least you know. Now, how do we help you find the bus that you do want to be on? And what can we do to support you rather than just ditching you at the bus stop and go, well, see ya, bye, good luck. How do we help each other get to where everyone wants to get to? Because we always get what we want by helping others first get what they want. And if we can only take that, if nothing else, as a sort of mantra, it's kind of like, how can I get you to what you want? Because in the process of doing that, if I don't receive anything materially back necessarily, like money or prestige or whatever, I will learn something. I will get a gift of that doing that anyway. I will have that experience of working with another human being. Go, you know what? I actually learned something. I've got a client now that I'm just finishing up with on a one-to-one thing. We've been working together for 18 months, and she was medically diagnosed as ADHD. Through the course of our coaching, I have learned so much about neurodiversity by working with her, how her brain works, how she thinks about it, because we've had an open conversation, which is, so tell me what your brain's doing now. Tell me how that's driving you. Being like, oh, right. Okay. I'm learning so much. And because I'm not willing to kind of go, you need to be this, it's this narrow, this is the way of being. It's like, no, who are you? And how do we support you be you? And how do we help you work with the different chip that's in your brain? My chip's different to your chip, but it's just a chip. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just different circuits. Okay. Let's figure out how that works. And then we go, okay, which parts of that helpful? Well, this part's helpful. That part's helpful. Which parts aren't helpful? Well, I don't like this, and this makes me feel uncomfortable. So what would you like to do about that? Oh, okay. Do you want to play with this? All right, let's try and play with that. Does that change it? Does that feel better? Yes. Does that feel better? No. Okay, let's do something different. And that dialogue, so that, yeah, I've been paid for the relationship, I've been paid well, and we've done some great stuff. But I walk away with that, with priceless experience and knowledge that I wouldn't have got necessarily
100%.
with another client.
100%. And I think it's the whole decision thing. You said, try this, try this, try this. A lot of people get stuck at the crossroads, like the whole King's story
Yeah.
of the procrastination. Should we go left? Should we go right? And there was a story about the king who his advisors were saying we should go this way because of X, we should go this way because of Y. And at the end of the day, you just go, let's just go left.
Yeah.
And there's a child there who says, well, why did you pick left? Because you hadn't got all the information. And he said, look, I'll find out faster if it was the wrong way by going left.
Yeah.
Because either it's right and I'm already halfway down the road, or I've learned it's the wrong way, I can turn back around and go the other way. So it's like the whole Japanese train example. If you're on the wrong train, get off at the first stop.
Yes.
And this is what people don't understand, is that just make a decision. Just make a decision and you'll work out faster if it was right or wrong, which will help you to improve moving forward. Now, if you listen back to my first ever podcast, I listened to it back a couple of days ago, because I'd obviously do guest ones and I do individual ones.
Sure.
And the quality of the sound, the way that I spoke, I'm not saying it's fantastic now, but it's markedly improved as it was at that point. And it's fine. I know that in a year's time or 2 years' time, I'll be even better. And that's what you have to have, that mentality. And it all comes back to the grey matter, doesn't it?
It does. And the biology.
And you can help to change your biology through reading about things. Like you said, you now deal with people with ADHD differently because you now know.
I know a little more. I don't know everything. I know a little more.
You know more, exactly. Yeah. And that helps you to...
Will I make mistakes with future clients? Yeah, probably.
And
I'll learn.
This is it. And people always want to back the horse at the end, the winning horse. They don't want to back the horse that's going through the races, but sometimes you have to. You have to.
I believe so. I believe it's more rewarding.
And you have to back yourself in that way, because we aren't the prize horse, Frankel, or whatever the horse's name was.
Yeah.
Yet, but maybe we might be. And people they'll be clapping for you when you're getting the awards, but they don't want to support you.
It's okay not to be. It's okay not to be.
So is there anything that we've not spoken about that you want to sort of get off your chest before we...
I don't think so. I think that's been a really, really wide-ranging, a generous conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, to be fair. And it's, as I said, it's the first one we've done in person. It won't be the last. And I think, as you said, it's a much different experience than on a Zoom call with the virtual backgrounds and the flickering and stuff. I'm not saying that's not fantastic and you can get loads from those conversations. But I think this was awesome. So thanks again.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We'll have to put all your stuff on the show notes, etc., so people can reach out to you.
I'd love
if they want to.
Thank you.
And yeah, it's been fantastic.